we gain control over this hemisphere, and basically we're eliminating all the export markets for China to dump their stuff. So I think you're gonna see a balkanization of the new world order, if you will. You got the Americas. You're gonna have Europe's really split into two, right? You got the Middle East that's kind of split into two. The Shia believe that they're ushering in the 12th Mahdi, which means it requires them to end the earth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bob Kudla, Trade Genius, joining me again, beginning of the year 2026. So many moving parts. It's like a static fuzz, but what is the truth? And truly, like, where do we go from here is more the question. It's that simple to boil down the rest of the year. We're seeing conflicting news. One news says this and then 100% opposite a few hours later, and like, which one's really true? Where is it going to go with the world in terms of control of resources and what's happening with the dollar? Are we going to see anything with that? And what kind of regions of the world are going to start to bond together as the kingdoms to start to control more resources as things get, well, let's say a little bit, the entire vibration of the planet is changing. So how do we hold it all together in this time of great change that we're all seeing upon us? So what comes here for us in 2026? So Bob, appreciate you joining me. Floor is yours.
We had a bump, a slump, we're going to get a pop, and we're going to get a dump. And that's kind of going to be the first quarter of this year. But we came out of the year with commodities on a tear. Gold, silver, copper, uranium, and energy. And I've been telling people, everybody's expecting oil down in the 40s. And I'm saying it's not going to happen, guys. And now with what Trump did in Venezuela, which we'll talk about in a minute, and what he's doing in Greenland are going to be game changers. And so I want to address both those things too, not from so much of a politics standpoint, but from a economic standpoint for the United States and the rest of the world. But the first thing I want to show you is that, everybody always asks me, so Bob, we see your individual results and blah, blah, blah. And, how does that stack up against different indexes and like, if I bought all your things that you recommend, how would I do? And ironically, one of my customers decided to do that. So Dave, this is what I want to show you. This is what my customer created. And he every week he sends me an updated version of this. And he explains the assumptions in there. And basically, he follows all the trades. And he wanted to, first of all, satisfy himself. But he was so blown away with my ability to outperform the indexes that he said, yeah, you're definitely worth the money, what you pay for the service. And if you notice, since about July, we started to accelerate away. And because we've upgraded our algorithm, and we're updating it again this week, actually Monday, a new version's coming out, that we tend to catch the better trades, and we tend to now get less false positives. But if you notice, the Qs and the SPY are pretty close to each other. Small cap has definitely been lagging, but the red line's us. And, we're 109% over from January 24 to January 15th of 26. Not too bad, huh? I thought I want to share that with people. The win rate, if you notice, our win rate metrics has gone up every year from 59% to 62% to now 77%. That's pretty amazing. And you can get high win rates, but, low amount of amounts, won. So we're kind of catching both. We're able to help grow your portfolio with a high win rate. We try to put a trade out every day, Dave. So it's not like I'm being really selective here. The tab that's showing the line is showing dollar amount gained, so not win rate. And that's the most important thing. You can have a 30% win rate and you can blow away the indexes, okay, because you're taking tight stops and letting the winner run. So we're small. We're what's called a small swing or short swing trader. We're in the trades average about 3 days, but amazing. And yesterday I did one I did it, put the trade on because of the algo signal. I left, put my stop and target in, came back home, I got hit. So with for profit, and that's you know pretty amazing, and so I'm pretty stoked about this. I want to share that with you guys, and I can share a bunch of attaboys with you too if you're interested. But we we're pretty excited about what we're doing here at Trade Genius, and we want you guys to join us. I think this year, 2026, is going to be an amazing year. Go to tradelikeagenius.com or trade with 2030 and let us know that Dave sent you if you come to me directly, so I can give him credit. And but definitely join us. What we charge for the service is nothing compared to what you get out of it. If this track record holds up, 2 or 3 trades, you pay for the whole year. So
I would just interject and say, if you contact Bob, just say, "Hi, Rocket Man, I saw you on David's show." And that'll let him know that you were here checking out the win rate. Now moving forward, though, into the rest of the year, there's so many things that you see scrambled. It's like a scrambled egg, you're cooking inside there. You got a pan full of scrambled eggs. It's kind of what our world is. There was some separation at a moment there, but when it got whisked together, well, now it's kind of a yellow mess until something else evolves out of it and it gets cooked back into a solid form again. What are we seeing for the rest of the year? Because I know a lot of people I'm talking to are just so like blitzkrieg distracted with so many, this is happening, that's happening. They're opposite of each other. I've noticed more and more of this 100% polarity of news being put out. So how do you walk through that of what is considered
yeah,
mainstream news as having 100% opposite stories of each other, even in the same day or week? It's
yeah,
difficult to, formulate something for, most people.
yeah. So we ignore the news for the most part, and the charts tell us what's really going on. But I'll give you my feel for it. Humility aside, I think I have a pretty good grasp of what I think is happening here. Is that we're running to the end of the fiat cycle, okay? And obviously, you and I talked about that for a while. So there's a lot of positioning now to what's next. Gold and silver are great to own, right? But they're not the only things to own. It doesn't matter if you own all the gold in the world, but if you can't be self-sufficient with food, and you can't be self-sufficient with energy, you're going to eventually give up all your gold, right? Because you're not going to be able to take care of your population. You're going to have to trade it for food and energy. And so, energy is definitely going to be the next thing that's going to move. Uranium's already moving. Gold and silver are already moving. Copper it broke records. It's starting to make its big move. But oil and gas are going to continue to rise, and that's a much bigger market. Okay. And that's where you have to really focus on. So, from our standpoint at Trade Genius, look, we've been talking about uranium now for years, okay, and it actually surpassed our targets. There's no look back. Germany now is actually going to reignite their nuclear power plants too. United States now is getting aggressive in reprocessing the uranium so that we can extend supplies. We're protecting domestic uranium production, and you have countries around the world trying to grow nuke plants like they're going out of business. So uranium names are going to stay strong for a long time. Oil and gas names are going to stay strong for a long time. Even if we go into recessions, guys, they're going to stay strong because the governments are just going to pump money to maintain their power base. But there's other places too. The agricultural inputs are going to go up in price. I'm a big owner of Mosaic, but IPI is a U.S. based company, and so you might want to own IPI as well. And then rare earths have taken a life of their own. And you have MP, and you have USAR in the United States. And you have UU. All those are doing great, and you need to fit those into your portfolio. The tech companies are going to fall off because money's going to rotate out of tech and into these names, except for two. I think Tesla and Google are going to be winners of the MAGA sevens. right? Or the Mag 7s, I threw a little MAGA in there, is that,
You're tricky, Bob. You're just throwing it in. You're a
yeah.
cunning linguist in there.
So Tesla is more than a car company. It's basically an AI company that produces cars, but they produce robots and they produce batteries, and they're producing the next gen. I mean, so sky's the limit with Tesla. So you want to be adding on dips as much as you can on Tesla. And Google just came out with a demonstration of their new quantum computer that basically just blew everything away. The next fastest computer would schedule to take 6.7 septillion years to solve a computational problem that the quantum computer solved in 5 minutes. So we are going to take leaps and bounds of productivity around the world, and the U.S. is in the strongest position on that. With what Elon Musk is doing and what Google is doing and what Nvidia is doing and what Palantir is doing is going to be hard to beat. Now let's talk Trump for a second. Okay, everybody thinks the guy is a crazy man, but he's crazy like a fox. And so Trump always does. He always asks for things 10 times more than what he really wants. And he's willing to back it because he has leverage with the tariffs, with this or with that. And he gets people to pay attention. The reason why he's so verbose and so out there is so the news gets covered. Remember, who he's negotiating with are their foot draggers, right? The Europeans and the Asians will drag their feet constantly, right? They're playing rope-a-dope with you all the time. So Trump flipped the script. He flipped over the table and said, you could drag your feet all you want, but you're going to pay me for the foot dragging in terms of tariffs. So it's in their best interest to negotiate with him. And so he did that with all the tariffs around the world. Okay. And then with Greenland, what he really wants is to own enough of that country with sovereignty versus leases. Number one is that they can't take the base away from him later if for whatever reason Denmark falls, right, or China goes and tries to throw a lot of money at the problem. Trump's already there. The other thing too is if he gets sovereignty on the coastline, that means he gets 200 miles out exclusive economic zones, and I think that's what he's really after. He's after rare earth and energy, but also he can keep the Russians and the Chinese ships offshore, okay? Because it's one thing to screw around with the Danes, right? There's a whole other conversation when you're dealing with nuclear attack submarines from the United States sitting offshore. And I think that's what he wants. He wants to own enough of that country to be able to own the ocean rights. And then he's going to cut whatever deal he needs to cut with the Greenlanders. Venezuela, on the other hand, was basically, it was a kill shot on China. And China's buying Venezuela oil at 50 cents on the dollar, basically to get their payback from all the stuff they loaned Venezuela, so that China can get cheap oil so that they can compete more effectively in the marketplace, plus also build a reserve if they want to go ahead and fight Taiwan, be able to absorb, the trade sanctions that would come from that. By doing what Trump has done here is he basically, the teapot refiners are out of business. Now they have to buy that heavy oil at market prices, number one. Number two, it strengthens Russia's leverage with China because Russia was at a disadvantage because that was Russia's only market, right, was China. And now the Chinese have to pay up. And then the third thing, too, is that basically between us and Saudi Arabia, we control the world oil markets. And we strengthen the American oil producers. So it was beautiful. And then we're going to get Cuba's just going to be a throw-in because they're not going to be able to survive, long term without the money from Venezuela. They have to buy the oil now from Mexico. They don't get it for free anymore. And so it's just going to be a matter of time before they cry uncle. and they cut a deal with the United States. That's what's happening there. So we're going to control South America. If you notice, 3 years ago, everybody thought South America was going to go total leftist, right? Argentina was left, Brazil was left, Bolivia was left, Peru was left, Colombia was left, Venezuela was left. Now we're in 2026. Oh, and Chile was left. Now Argentina's right, Chile's right, Bolivia is right, Venezuela is right, and I've isolated Brazil. Okay, and then Colombia now is begging to meet with Trump because they're in the crosshairs, right? And so, and also Honduras went right. So we did a total flip the script in South America, and who's next is going to be Cuba. So we gained control of this hemisphere, and basically we're eliminating all the export markets for China to dump their stuff. And so with Iran going out now, is Iran 3 months and they're gone. China is really in trouble now because the people that will take over in Iran, remember that the Chinese enabled the Iranians to be in charge. And so they may sell to the Chinese or they may not, or they may say, yeah, and also they're getting cheap oil out of Iran too. And so because of the sanctions, that goes away. The United States now can move all its military assets, a bulk of them, to the Western Pacific. And now China is facing United States undivided attention with the Japanese, who the Chinese fear even more than the United States because the Japanese are just so good when they get focused. And now with the Philippines, Japan's supplying the Philippines, we're supplying the Filipinos. So now you got China basically trapped. Russia's not sad about this. We're going to cut a deal with Russia. You watch. The next 2 years, we'll cut a deal with Russia. European Union's already saying, hey, you're European, you're not Asian. Let's come back into the fold here. Let's get this Ukrainian thing under control. And then China's totally isolated. The only thing we got to watch out for is if there's a currency collapse somewhere. Japan's getting a little shaggy here with their bond market, and China's Potemkin village, as you know. I'm sure your listeners know, your background and you have some good insights in China, but my view has always been that China is not who they think they are or the people think they are or who they portray to be. They're probably half the size, half the growth, half as powerful as the world has set forth. And there's no way we're going to let Taiwan go without a fight because the technology that Taiwan has is basically world changing for the United States. And we're not going to let Taiwan, let the Chinese grab that or deny us from it. So
if I may interject about Taiwan, you're looking at the world's largest screenplay with actors coming in and out playing their parts. If Taiwan were to fall, the world as you know it, with this march forward of track, trace, digital IDs, digital currencies, everything that is going to come under this guise of folding in on this dystopian world they have envisioned for everybody, stops on a dime and goes back 10 years if that chip production stops. So if you think for even a fifth of an eighth of a second that Taiwan is in danger, you drank the Kool-Aid. They need it more integrally for the entire global governance structure to come together to get to this one world governance, to get to this one global currency, to get to the whatever it is going to be termed as this global unit of trade. None of it functions without continuous, uninterrupted chip production for everything from the drones to the flock cameras, everything in between, the high tech, the military, the AI. It all ceases if Taiwan stops. So if you think for even a nanosecond that anything is going to be done to that island, it's the world's largest stage play. And with Colombia, we need Colombia because we're going to run the pipelines straight through there and connect into the existing Mexican network. So we're going to run that oil overland. We're not going to be exporting it by ship. It's going to all go overland. And once they put double rail lines through there, through the Darien Gap, we're going to be connected And that big C is going to be, well, from Venezuela through Colombia, through the Darien Gap, up through Mexico, into the United States, including Canada and Greenland, which we've seen maps from the 1940s, Technocrate de America. This is all planned before. So this whole Taiwan thing going to get invaded, never going to happen. Never going to happen. Because you're telling me that their entire plan moving up to 2030 to 2035 is absolutely going to shred and go back 10 years, or they're going to continue chip production unabated and actually ramp up production across the planet, including Taiwan, including Korea, including Japan, including the United States. And it's just going to move forward. So there's two possible scenarios. All this global governance thing that we're hearing about is complete bullshit, or it's true, and they're going to keep the chip production up and running to try to bring this into fruition of this whole dystopia that they have planned, that we see many videos about, here people talking about global government, etc. There's no kind of middle ground on it. It's either going to go back 10 years or it's going to continue to move forward. So Taiwan is just, in my opinion, not going to be molested. By the way, I'm going back there in 2 months. So
Yeah, well, I think it's more of what the Book of Revelation says too. It's gonna take a demonic being to link everybody. We're gonna fragment.
yeah,
Uh, we may have dystopian, but it's gonna be regional dystopian, right? Trump went to Davos this week and basically said, your world order is dead. My world order is ascending." So I think you're gonna see a balkanization of the new world order, if you will. You got the Americas. You're going to have Europe's really split into two, right? You got the Middle East that's kind of split into two. You got East Asia and you got South Asia. You got Africa and you got China. And so I think that's how it's all going to balkanize, and then we'll take it from there. So for those who are Christian and are interested in the Book of Revelation, is that's the 7 heads, 10 horns scenario.
10
Yeah,
regions of those global maps you've seen. And that mark of the beast requires an AI chip. Chips to be inserted into humans on the wrist or in the forehead. You're going to need chips.
It'll be a mark. But here's the thing, though. You're dealing with a den of thieves. So who is China going to let the U.S. be in charge? No.
No.
Is the U.S. going to let China in charge? No. Are the Europeans going to let China in charge? No. So they're all going to be fighting each other. So you may be right in terms of the because look, at England is the prototype right now. The Five Eyes countries are scary. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and United Kingdom. They're going full on censorship, right? So. But the United States is not going to cede that to the United Kingdom. I think that's a fight that's going to just be ongoing for a while. I can't control that. All I could do is vote and persuade and try to profit from what's going on, in the world today. And you're talking about Agenda 2030. Well, we're getting global solar minimum 2030 also, and you just never know in these open systems. You just never know what's going to happen. These guys, I always say these guys think they're in control, but they're more notorious than they are competent. And sometimes things just happen. And Iran is a case in point. They're Shia. Everybody worried about, well, China has the bomb, the US has the bomb, Russia has the bomb. They're rational players. They know if they pop off the nukes that there's nothing left. So nobody's that total annihilation works to keep people from doing anything. The Shia believe that they're ushering in the 12th Mahdi, which means it requires them to end the earth. So, if they ever got bombs that can go somewhere, and nobody's saying they don't have bombs. I mean, they could be literally underneath cities right now, is that they would have no compunction to take those out. So there are things out there that people just need to be really, really concerned about, because for them, being rational is actually ending the world. Okay. And look, you think they want to be part of the West New World Order? Of course not. They want to own the New World Order. And here's the other thing, Dave, that's so bizarre to me, is that the Times of London's talking about hedging your portfolio against visitations from aliens. Like, what the heck is that?
Fake alien
I mean,
invasion, Illuminati card deck, last card.
yeah. So that's demonic too. So there's a lot of things happening that can scare you. Look, I can't control any of that. Um, those who don't believe, you might want to start revisiting your belief systems. Those who do believe, we have a place to go. And so other than that, we just have to live our lives the best we can. But things are going to get increasingly volatile, and with volatility comes opportunity.
Yeah, and I would say one thing about the 10 kingdoms here. This is a map that was produced in 1945, I believe, and then it was redone in 1972. But it shows the 10 kingdoms. And now not talking kingdoms heaven or anything. I'm talking about kingdoms and 10 regions of the planet have been divided up, already pre-chosen. And as you said, China is going to control its own kingdom area in Asia. United States is going to control its North American region, including Mexico kingdom. So they've already been chosen. I encourage everyone, I'll even put it on the screen here for you to see it. It's called the 10 kingdoms map. And it's already been predetermined where these lines are going to break and which regions are going to stay amongst themselves, but they're not going to overtake. They're going to have their leaders in the 10, but then one will be reigning over those 10, which is interesting. None of it moves forward without the tech. None of it moves forward without copper. None of it moves forward without silver. So when you look at this in terms of, why, Venezuela, another interesting point about that is we need it so integrally to keep this agenda moving forward that, in a logical standpoint, you look at Venezuela and you're like, you guys are being so greedy. You're not putting your resources on the market for our global governance structure. Like, how dare you not take all those resources and put them in play for the global governance and the global citizenry? You're out of bounds, man. We're going to overtake your country. We're going to put all your resources in play because we need them to keep the global governance initiatives moving forward. It's come down to the first time, at least in the way I'm assessing it is, as the first time that global governance has used violence to take resources to continue the global governance infrastructure movement forward. First it's happened. And you could argue and say, yeah, well, Iraq, we've all been stealing oil, this, that, the other. But it's not. This is the first time where a country literally said, we don't want to sell you anything. And it's like, that's not possible. We're coming in to take it. We need all your minerals, like the Orinoco area, all those silver, those artesian mines that haven't been put into production, a massive amount of gold as well, like all the copper mines, and they're barely doing anything with mining there. We need your metals out of the earth, and you're holding them from society as a whole in general. How dare you? We're going to take it. We're going to put it into production, and you're just going to sit back. We're going to enrich your people. They don't have to worry about food and eating cat and dog anymore. We're going to give them really full supermarkets, and you all are out of there, but we're going to extract your minerals and put them into the world stage because you didn't do it. This is the kind of world we've moved into.
Unless that, then we wanted to keep it from China. So,
there's many layers of the onion. I agree with you.
Yeah. We may get to that point, but it's basically Trump wanted China out of our hemisphere. So he peed on the tree. And but other than that, I agree with you. That stuff was holding up. China was holding that stuff off for themselves. Mm-hmm. China wants high copper prices. China wants high silver prices. China wants high gold prices because they hold all those minerals. China wants high and non-available, rare earths because they hold all those minerals. So, and they wanted cheap oil, and they were getting cheap oil, and Russia was getting cheap oil. And so we may get to where you're going. I'm not arguing with you on that, but I don't think Trump's a globalist in that sense. Trump might be one of the last bastions of the anti-globalist. His ego's too big to be to be in a world order run by somebody else. Okay, and right now that's Europe. Europe is trying to run the new world order. And
they're failing miserably. They're infighting.
Right, they're failing miserably. And speaking of which, everybody's worried about the dollar collapsing and our bond markets. Don't listen to any of that crap on the news. Okay, in the next 12 months, unless something earth-shattering happens, our trade deficit's going to disappear. You know what that means for the dollar? The dollar's going to go through the roof. Okay,
so will gold and silver then.
Right. And also energy. And guess who's the largest exporter of natural gas in the world? United States. We're the largest producer of oil in the world, United States. So now if you combine the production of Venezuela, which is basically United States, we control marginal costs of energy, and Europe, they're unable to compete. I mean, other than Norway, right, and a little bit of the United Kingdom, they can't produce the energy. They're reliant on the Middle East, and they're reliant on Russia to provide their energy. So Europe is becoming a vassal. They just tried to play the big game by playing everybody off on each other, and they can control the tempo. I mean, they were really upset in Davos this week because they said the New World Order is failing. And then Mark Carney, I mean, he's just an idiot. All Trump has to do to shut Canada off is to say, you know what, why don't you just trade with China? We're not going to trade anything with you from now on. Canada would collapse in 6 months. Who's Canada going to sell to? China doesn't want any of their stuff. They only want their resource extraction. And you probably would have the 3 Western or 4 of the Western provinces, even BC may roll, and the Yukon become part of the United States. So, these guys just puffing up their chest and they have nothing to back it. So, Pax Americana, okay, is still in play. The news of America's demise has been greatly exaggerated. Okay, now it doesn't mean 4 or 5 years from now something else might happen. If the Democrats take over again, then then your scenario plays out, Dave.
We need to take the Ice Age corridor from Alaska all the way to British Columbia again and put it under control. Like, we can control the previous Ice Age corridor if you follow the traditional quote unquote history, where we walked over the ice bridge and there was a section of ice that wasn't covering of the 2-mile glaciation, but they were able to walk from Alaska all the way down and populate America. But wait, I forgot the Clovis people were here. But go with the traditional story. Ice Age corridor is open for business again. Let's take it.
So anyway, so it's going to be an interesting year. And, I think maybe next couple of months we'll talk into the politics of the midterms a little bit, because a lot rides on that, and so we'll see, how far things, push towards voter ID and stuff like that, because, what you said is that they don't want voter ID in the country because the Democrats lose power. Maybe that's where Trump accelerates the digital ID, right, on behalf of the New World Order to get his SAFE Act approved. I just want to share with you guys, there's trades every day now. So, Dave and I love talking the macro stuff. I think, when Dave and I started about 10, 12 years ago, I think we had like a 3 or 4 hour conversation. Remember that? We carved it up into like 7 videos. We were up half the night.
Creative
editing.
So
funny about it, we were talking about what was going to happen in 2025 to 2030, and it was 2015 and 2016, and we weren't too far off. I mean, look, it's a cold winter. It's really starting to bite now, and you see Japan, Hokkaido. I mean, and it pushed the snow all the way down into southern Japan, which is really subtropical, and so that's really interesting to me. And then you're talking about ice storms. My customers are talking about West Virginia, going into a deep freeze, and it's been cold here in SoCal. So I'm like, bring it on, man, bring it on.
Yeah, I'll say that the Kamchatka Peninsula snowstorm broke a 147-year snow record for that part of Russia, just above Japan, where Bob was referencing. And, Bob, one last question for you. If the midterms go awry and more Democrat were to get in to not have a majority any longer in both House and Congress, like, what kind of lockup and snarl could we expect for the next 2 years of almost nothing getting done? Or am I misreading that? If midterms go a certain way, will things still be accomplished, or will it just be like this scrum in the middle there?
I think only the House really is vulnerable at the moment. The Senate, there's kind of no map for the Democrats really to win the Senate. And so there's chaos because the House could just like vote for like nothing. But remember, the House, their constituents need things too. So if the House does all this crazy stuff and Trump just decides, you know what, shut it down, I don't care. IDAF, right? Well, guess what? All those people in the cities don't get their SNAP. don't get their uh, welfare payments. Student loans don't go out. Those are all Democrat constituencies, and so there's a lot of cards Trump can play. And plus, if the conservatives in this country truly get scared enough to actually become activists, all the Democrats live in cities. I was explaining to somebody the other day that from North Dakota to Texas is all MAGA country. That's where all the food is. That's where the transportation networks are. That's where the energy and the energy transportation corridors are. Okay, the cross-country corridors are there. And so you can have general strikes, right? Truckers are notoriously independent people. And they can just say, you know what? If you're going to do that, we won't go into the cities. We don't have to. Free country. I don't have to deliver there. Trump controls the military. I won't send troops to deliver food there. You're scaring people, Mr. Democrat, with your rhetoric. I mean, look at the rhetoric. If we get in, the first thing we're going to do is arrest everybody. I mean, that's Kafkaesque. So I think, people need to understand that these elections are now for all the marbles. A liberal could survive and do very well in Trump country. Trump people can't survive, in Newsom country. All right. I mean, the harassment would make Stalin blush. So I just think these are things that people really, really need to wrap their arms around. And I think Trump is doing everything he possibly can to wake people up. So we'll see if both Senate and the House go. Then it can get really scary. I'm kind of confident that something's going to happen on the voting thing because they could pass it through continuing resolution. Doesn't require the filibuster being nuked, and so they just have to craft it in a way that stupid rhinos don't bail out on it. Okay, I know we're running over time, Dave.
Yeah, that's all right. But I just want to say one last thing. Those actors that are going to come in and out of their slots called politicians being elected, they're nothing more than actors coming in and out playing their roles. So the only way to really escape this is to become incredibly wealthy so you don't have to play by the same rules that are set aside for most people. So your objective is to become incredibly wealthy during this time so you don't have to be stuck in the same rule pool as everybody else. And one of those ways to do that as well, becoming incredibly wealthy, tradewith2030.com.
There
Check
you
it
go.
out. Bob, appreciate your time today. But I'm telling you, I'm really being totally incredibly serious here. Myself, here's my focus. Think and Grow Rich. I got this right on my desk here, hard copy, for any of you about setting your goals and having the intent and focusing on that. How much do you need to make per day, per week, per month? You should have that goal set and try to achieve that. And trading can help you do it, as well as holding on some of these physicals, the fizz. Anyway, appreciate it, Bob. Thank you. And as well to you all, thank you for joining this important conversation. What do you think about the ideas spoken here? I have my own ideas that I've seen of these maps. I mean, these 1940s maps showing Greenland, the United States, or I should say North America, Mexico, all the way down, controlling Venezuela and Colombia. These maps were in 1940. So, I mean, what were the plans for all of this that are this blueprint that's been set? Like this Agenda 2030 is a blueprint moving forward. I mean, there might be some setbacks for it, but it seems that so far what has been planned from the 40s and 50s has sort of manifested in this time. So would it not make sense things that were Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 are going to manifest, maybe not as quickly as intended, but at some point in the future? But the infrastructure and the supplies, the whatever you like to call that, resources needed to facilitate all this are going to need to be in play to facilitate all of this. So leave your comments in the box below. I like to read those, send them off to Bob, get some ideas for the next month for talking points. And also during this time, My Patriot Supply got a 3-day food supply, 7-day food supply, and a 2-week food supply for you. Check it out in the description box below. Every purchase you make helps keep this channel on air, bringing interviews just like this. Appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of the video. See you next time. Bye for now.